Welcome to Tech and Thrive, where we explore the intersection of technology, well-being, and performance. Our goal is to uncover the stories of pioneers and entrepreneurs who are not only shaping the future of tech, but prioritizing balance, creativity, and purpose in their journey. My name is Kimia, and today we're thrilled to be joined by Silvan Krähenbühl, founder and CEO of DELOS Analytica, host and managing director of Swisspreneur, and a serial entrepreneur who has co-founded and exited ventures like Gymhopper and Rentouch. Silvan brings deep expertise in B2B SaaS, public affairs, stakeholder management, and startup ecosystem building. In this conversation, we'll explore how he juggles these roles, what he's learning now, and how he stays grounded while scaling with impact. Welcome, Silvan.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I realize every time we do something in English, my last name is a real tongue twister.
It is. Actually, so in preparation to having you on, I obviously listened to some other podcasts and everyone says it differently. So can you please finally set the record straight?
It's a challenge. There's no straight record. You do whatever feels right.
Because I guess in Swiss German, it's like Krähenbühl.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, and then in German it's like Krähenbühl.
Yeah.
I don't know. So how do you usually tell people?
I only use my first name. That's my trick.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, Silvan. Nice to have you on board. And as I already mentioned, you are the managing director and host or co-host. I think Merle also joined you, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Of Swisspreneur, which is is it still one of the biggest business podcasts in Switzerland, right?
I mean, it's always a bit up and down with the charts, but yeah, one of the biggest.
Yes, super excited to have you. It's a pleasure to have you, obviously, also on the other side of this table. We have talked a little bit about what we want to talk about previously, but I think for the listeners, it's always nice to start at the beginning. So can you walk us through your early career and what were the key turning points for you that led you in the end into entrepreneurship?
That's a funny story because in retrospective, my mom told me once that, oh, you were always the one that was sort of organizing everything with the neighbor kids. You were like playing outside. You would get on a chair or a tree and you would just say, okay, you do this, you do that, and then make sure everything got done. So I guess it's running a bit in my DNA without even knowing it. So even when I was a little kid, I always started new projects, from printing T-shirts or trying to do my own detective bureau.
Oh, I love that. We also did that, actually.
Yeah.
I'm so sad my sister cannot be here because she's currently in Barcelona. But it's so funny. We also, as you know, we founded our company last year, Kimia, and we used to play hotel together. So we managed a hotel. Then we also used to play that we had companies, and we also were detectives, of course.
Amazing. So
cool.
it's the classic thing, the checklist, I guess.
Yeah.
So I would say it was just running in my DNA, but then the real key point was probably during high school. There we had the chance to participate in a project. It was called Young Enterprise Switzerland. So for 1 year, we actually started our own company.
Wow.
Not legally, but it was just a framework. So you had the choice. Do you write a report and do an analysis, or you do the company for 1 year, which is, of course, way more work, but well, it sounds like more fun. Let's try this. And that was really when I sort of discovered this love for entrepreneurship, because it was really a lot of fun to do and build something out of nothing with a little small team.
Yeah, so cool. So you've always been more hands-on-y than as opposed to the theory guy. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I get bored with the theory part if it's too much.
Yeah.
Which can be good and bad at the same time, I guess.
Yeah. I think a healthy balance is usually good. Or you get a co-founder who does the whole strategy or theory part, and then you're the executor, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And so how did you then end up founding your first company after you founded your, let's say, not imaginary, but not proper incorporated company?
It was sort of never a goal to have my own company. It sort of just developed into that. So with that Young Enterprise Switzerland program during high school, I then got to know more people who studied in St. Gallen at HSG. And then that was sort of, okay, I know more people there than in Bern, which would have been the easy way to just say, okay, I live with my parents, I study in Bern, so I can just commute from the Emmental Valley to Bern and back. But then I knew more people who studied at HSG. So I was like, well, I already know all these people. Maybe I should just go and study business there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I then did. And when I started the first year, the assessment year, my traditional career aspirations were, okay, it's either going to be consulting or investment banking at one
Yeah.
point, like the traditional thing that was very common back then.
Absolutely.
And then again, through a coincidence, I just saw a sort of a job ad. There are a lot of university clubs. So basically student-run organizations that focus on a core topic. And there were 3 entrepreneurs who basically founded the Young Entrepreneurs Club, YAC, we call it. And they were looking for board members. And I was like, sounds kind of interesting. I sort of enjoyed that during my time at high school. So I just applied. I met with the guys, and all 3 of them were studying, or probably less studying, and they were all running companies on the side.
Yeah.
They were starting their own startups. So then that sort of, I got involved there, and then the guys were, of course, all super busy. So then after like 2 months of the intention of starting this club, they came and said, hey, we don't have the time, but do you want to lead it as a president? I was like, guys, I've never done that before. Like, what are you thinking? But then they pushed me a bit and said, don't worry, you can always call us, etc. And then I just, okay, let's try. And that then really sort of started things off there. So I got connected to the startup ecosystem, met a lot of great entrepreneurs. And then out of that, it was sort of pretty clear that it will eventually lead into my own startup. And then we
That's
had our
really
own
cool.
problem and started from there, even during university. And after my bachelor's, we started the company. The first one was Gymhopper.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting, because that means you have never, so did you do high school, like gymnasium, or did you do high school? Yeah, gymnasium.
Yeah, exactly.
So that means you had never had a job outside of kind of your own ventures, except obviously Rentouch, you came in a little bit later, right?
Right.
But that means you've been self-employed from the start, more or less.
Yeah, I always had like student jobs or something, but
Yeah.
never like a full-time job.
Yeah.
So it was always like student jobs or vacation jobs to like bake cookies in the Comfy factory back in my hometown, basically. But yeah, I never had a job per se. I just straight jumped into my own company
Mm-hmm.
with all the ups and downs. And that was also a very tough negotiation, because my parents were like, hey, you haven't finished university yet. You didn't do your master's degree yet. So I had this long conversation and a bit of a little tactic to always delay it by a bit. So I said first, oh no, it's just my summer project, instead of going and working in the cookie factory again, I will try this. And then he was like, okay, after summer, you will go back and continue with your master's. I said, well, actually, we now have the first client, so maybe next year. And then I always delayed it. And at one point it was just like, yeah, it's not going to happen.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a really good tactic, just bit by bit.
Well, it's difficult because the parents want the best for you, right?
Of
And
course,
they always
yeah.
think you need the master's degree because that was the norm back then.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And that's interesting, because I think, so your family is not like traditionally entrepreneurial, right? Or are they?
they are. My parents, they both had their own veterinary practice. So
Yeah.
they had the business together, and they are entrepreneurs in
Yeah.
their very own way.
Mhm.
Not like the software startup or anything, but they are like hard entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
And I also, of course, learned a lot because the business was always present, right? At dinner, at lunch. It was a dominating factor in our family life. And that was, of course, probably also an influence where it was just normal to have long days, long working hours, and do whatever it takes to make your business succeed in any way you can.
But for them, obviously, how they grew up, it was more, okay, you're going to get the degree, you're going to get some experience, and then you do something of your own.
Exactly. And it's so funny, then I have my grandmother or my grand aunt, they always ask me, when do you get a real job, Of course, because they're not used to that kind of work. So
Mhm.
that was like about 10 years ago. And of course, times were very different, and they wanted you to succeed. They wanted you to have a stable, secure income
Mhm.
and a job that is there and you don't need to worry about it.
Absolutely. Sounds very familiar. Actually,
I
my
imagine.
grandma was exactly the same, because I started off in big corporate, and then I was at Schindler for like 6.5 years in their global application services department. And then I told my grandma, yeah, I'm thinking about like getting another job. She's like, why?
Yeah.
It's stable. aren't you
Exactly.
happy? I mean, you don't have to be that happy. It just has to be stable, you know?
Right.
And then she was so worried when I quit. It was super sweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually for me, I was also told, so my parents, they have always been very entrepreneurial. My mom is a software developer. She had her own company. My dad is like a serial entrepreneur. But it's funny because my grandpa, for instance, they grew up on a farm, so he had a farm. But that was also very entrepreneurial, and a lot of people do not realize that it is, right?
Yep.
They're like, yeah, but he was a farmer, you know? I'm like, yeah, but there's so much that goes into like running a farm.
Exactly.
It's very similar to running an enterprise, or it
Fully.
is an enterprise, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same for your parents.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess times have changed. Would you say nowadays you still need to get a degree in order to succeed in life?
No, I don't think so. But at the same time, I think it helped me to have the bachelor's degree just to also build trust. Because then with Gymhopper, we got business angels aboard, etc. And I feel that was sort of a signal of trust that you can get stuff done and they don't know you. And by having that degree, it just helps to show them, hey, you're a good person. You can get things done. I still think it's maybe not the best time investment. Like if you have a great business idea, you can build early traction. You probably could even skip that. But for me, it was sort of a good safety net. You know, the bachelor's was perfect. The master's would have probably been a waste of time for me because then I really discovered entrepreneurship and knew what I wanted to do. But if you don't, then it's a great way to meet people, to experiment, and eventually find what might be the right fit for you.
I mean, if you would have never gone to St. Gallen, obviously you probably wouldn't have found the Gymhopper, right?
Yeah.
So
It's very difficult to say, but most likely not.
yeah. I also only have a bachelor's degree, by the way,
You
and
see?
I'm doing pretty well, I would say. And the funny thing is that I always knew, just because how I grew up, that I wanted to be self-employed at some point. That was like out of the question. But then I thought once I had the bachelor's, I was like, oh, okay, now I have it.
Yep.
And then I was like, but I'm anyways going to employ myself if I have it or not, right? I feel like it still helped, and it also gives you a lot of credibility because, as I said, I was before also in big corporate, in industrial sector, and then in consulting. That definitely helped to have a degree there.
For sure. There you really need it, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. But then now I think I have learned so much more just by executing and like falling on my nose and getting up again and learning and adjusting, exchanging with interesting people like yourself. It's the same for you, right? You built this path kind of by trial and error.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you can study all the books out there, all the case studies, whatever it is, but the fastest way to learn is really by doing. And you have so many new things and new complexities to tackle, to understand, to figure things out. And that's just the best way to learn and to grow as a person or also in a career perspective. So I feel that is the key part. That's the essential part, because if you read a book or something, it gives you some input, maybe some ideas, but you haven't really learned how to then make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. And what would you say was the biggest maybe failure that then gave you the biggest insight into how you would like to operate?
There were so many. I can share two. The first one was very simple. We developed the whole concept of Gymhopper, and we thought, this is amazing, this will work. And then, okay, we have the perfect idea, we have the perfect start. Already started with some app development without even validating anything. And then I basically had to call the gyms to become part of the network. The first idea we had was that they could join completely free of charge. I called gym after gym. They were all not interested in even talking to us, although the membership and everything was free. And it was so hard and so difficult to convince them to become part of a network. They simply did not care because it was not supporting their core business. And then only after tweaking the model and learning from customer feedback, we then found a model where the gyms are actually willing to pay us and really interested in paying us. And I feel that first part of, you don't think about the business idea in your little study room and then you just go out there and it magnificently works. You have to go out there and talk to the customers, listen, ask for feedback. then adapt your pitch based on what you learned. And we did that until the first gym in one of these feedback calls or meetings actually was telling us, this sounds really interesting. How much does it cost? I would like to become part of it. And that's where we knew, okay, now we have the model fine-tuned and tweaked that we can actually make it happen. And then you develop the app and then you acquire more customers with the same story. But until you're there, you probably haven't done your homework yet.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that a lot of people forget. And there's so many easy ways to validate an idea nowadays, right? Just like get a URL, have a sign-up page, create some FOMO, and then see if it actually flies. And if you do not have that many signups, maybe it was not the best idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time.
Exactly. Yeah. I also funnily learned that in the past year because so I just started this like entrepreneurial thing a year ago, right? And then suddenly you have opportunities right and left, people who want you as a co-founder, people who want to co-found something that you're interested in with you. And then I talked to so many people, and I also started like 2 side projects while building a company. And then I also took over a CEO position in March. So my plate was more than full.
Of course.
I use the analogy of there's a lot of toasts and you are the butter, and there's a lot of toast with butter on top, but none of them have enough butter to actually be tasty. So then I had to decide which toast I wanted to stop putting my energy in, my butter. So then I also had to realize that it's totally okay to say you're going to do something, and then if it doesn't work out, or if you do not have the passion or energy to put it in, that you just put it on hold, or you even just cancel it, And there's no shame in that. I feel like we grow up in this society that tells us, no, but you have to succeed. It's really bad if you fail and so on. I think the more American way is slightly coming towards Switzerland. I guess you within the startup ecosystem can also feel that. But still in the heads of Swiss people, I think it's like you have to validate an idea like 100 times before you can go into market. And if it fails, it's really bad and your reputation is like ruined. So yeah, that has also been one of my learnings, I think, within this year, that you need to figure out where you want to prioritize your time on. And then also there's no shame in starting things and then just letting them go, because you're going to still learn something from them usually.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that mindset of it needs to be perfect is bullshit, because it really limits you.
Yeah, definitely.
You will not get anywhere. And I feel people here, they also try to do too many things at the same time because they feel, oh, I commit. And they don't question if it still makes sense. It's like, oh, I committed, now I need to follow through. And then you try to do a lot of things and you don't do anything really well. I feel always you can have everything, but just not at the same time. So you have to really choose your battles and decide what you will focus on, because building a company is really, really hard. You have a lot of ups and downs, and it takes usually much more time than you think to get to where you want to be. So if you don't give everything you have, it's incredibly difficult to even make it. And people then often lose this motivation because they do like 4 or 5 things at the same time. And of course, you cannot give your undivided attention to 4 or 5 things at the same time. So choose your battles wisely and then really go all in. But that's the key part. The co-founder part, that was the second learning. That's really, really key. That's also something I learned early on, that the co-founder selection is probably one of the most important decisions you make, where you really need to have shared values, that you share the same view on things and the way that you want to deal with each other, that you want to work together, that this is aligned and you're actually rowing in the same direction, but then have complementary skill sets to, for example, someone can do the sales part and another person can do the technological part if you have a software startup. That is really key. And I also learned that the hard way, where then I had to let go of my co-founder at Gymhopper. That was a very turbulent time, but also a very good learning to go through that, and then to not be completely certain and 100% correct all the time, but much more aware of what it takes to have the right co-founding dynamics for the future projects.
Definitely. So when you started Gymhopper, how did it start and what was the problem that you wanted to solve?
It was basically our own problem. So I was in St. Gallen for the studies, sometimes in Zurich, but almost every weekend back at my parents' place in the Emmental or in Bern. And with the gym membership, I like to work out. So with the gym membership I had, I was only able to train in the Emmental, nowhere else, because it was one of these beautiful independent gyms. And I wanted to have a membership that allowed me to train everywhere in Switzerland, no matter where I'm going. But at the same time, I was not a big fan of the big gym chains like Migros or something, because they didn't really want to have a lot of free weights or stuff like that. So then I was like, okay, we need to sort of build a network of these independent gyms to have an opposing pool to these big chains. So we built an app that connected these gyms. And if you had a membership in one of these gyms, you could train free of charge in all the other gyms that were a member of it. That was pretty cool because we were basically selling software as a membership to the gyms. So we had like software margins. We had no variable costs. So the entrances that happened, we did not reimburse them. So we didn't have any costs coming there. And pretty fast after launching, we were like double the size than Migros, which was pretty cool in Switzerland. Unfortunately, it didn't work in other countries because the Swiss market is very unique. But that was a cool experience to learn and really build that you can see, hey, you can actually create something out of nothing, just an idea.
Yeah, that's very inspiring. And I also love that, I guess, also working out was kind of a passion of yours. Then you had a pain, right? And then some people say you also need a need. So the rest of the market actually feels the same as you, or a part of the market. Yeah. And I guess you guys met all of the three criteria to start a company. It's super cool.
We were really lucky with the timing because the chains, they were aggressively expanding. And the gym owners, they came out of a very prosperous period where most of the gyms were independent gyms. They made really good money. Like some of the gym owners said, I asked them, like, why did you start a gym business? And they were like, well, I just saw other gym owners. They were driving these big American cars. I wanted to have the same luxurious setup. I was like, okay. And that was sort of the right timing. And I think the timing part, it's something that is probably the most underrated. You always think about the co-founder, the team, the product, all of that. It's really important as well. But probably the most important thing is the timing, and you cannot influence it. You can only try to understand where you are. Is the timing spot on? Are you too early, too late? And the timing is probably an incredible multiplier that really defines whether you'll be successful or not. So I think it's important to think hard about that, and you will feel it because then you don't have to push too much to sell your product. People will actually want to buy. That's something we then saw very well at Rentouch because COVID was a huge boost there. Companies would reach out to us. We did a demo, and because we had so much work, we couldn't always follow up within one day. And then the customers would email us and say, I really want to start. Can you send me the slides you presented? And that's a very good indication that the timing is spot on.
Yeah, so nice. And then you had the exit with Gymhopper. You sold it to My Clubs, I believe, which is an Austrian company, right?
Exactly.
So how did they just buy up your user base or your customer base, or how did they integrate the two companies then?
Yeah, so My Clubs was already active in Switzerland, but mainly focused on the cities. And when we then tried to expand with Gymhopper, we went to Austria, we went to Sweden, Denmark, and we figured out it's not working. It's not the same market as Switzerland. We then said, okay, we have to pivot and we have to double down on Switzerland. And we then started an additional offering for corporates where we offered corporate fitness memberships for companies so their employees could train nationwide in Switzerland. And My Clubs wanted to actually offer the same. They realized, okay, B2C, what they were focusing on, it's nice. It's an okay margin, but maybe not the best. And the money that you make is really in corporate fitness. So then, because they were really heavily focused on the cities, they needed a network to expand across Switzerland and also basically more sales power to be able to execute that. So that's, in the end, they were interested in the network of the gyms that we had because we had a very good nationwide coverage. So we didn't have 20, 30, 40 gyms per city, but we had all across Switzerland covered even in rural areas. And that was the big benefit. So then for a time, they continued with Gymhopper on its own because it had good margins. And on top, moved these gyms to the business, to the B2B offering.
Mm-hmm. And during your earnout, you stayed on, right? And that was, so if I understand correctly, that was like your first actual job, no? As an
Yeah,
employee. That's so
exactly.
funny.
Yeah.
So you were an employee at your own company. And how was this experience? And then also, I mean, I can imagine why you then went back into entrepreneurship, because I feel like people who have tasted it and have succeeded, it's really hard to let go, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, how was your experience being an employee for the first time in your life?
So I have really big respect for the team at my clubs. I think they're always incredibly supportive, really, really great people. And then they sold the company to the Germans, to urban sports clubs, and they got acquired again just recently by the Americans. So it sort of moved on and
Mm-hmm.
on. And we always had a really good working relationship. But the founder and CEO of my clubs always said, look, I know one day you're going to start your own company again. Like, it will be clear, we want to work together, we want to do the best we can, but it's clear that one day you're an entrepreneur, you'll have your own thing again. So that was sort of always clear. And of course it's different if you are working for someone else or within a company that is not fully yours. But there, I mean, you also have measures, right? You have shares that you can hand out to include people. You can let people really run the show. So they gave me a lot of freedom to build up a new product line, do the sales part, etc. So it was not like, oh, now I'm working in a big corporate and I just don't have anything to say anymore. They did give me a certain amount of freedom, but then it was also still clear at one point, okay, it's time to do something else.
Mm-hmm. And then how did you end up getting involved in Rentouch? Because that company you did not found.
Exactly.
So you were again an employee.
Yep.
And I think you were in like an enterprise.
Basically, I did sales for
It's
them.
just
Yeah.
sales, right? Okay.
So we had a
Yeah.
common contact, an M&A advisor
Mm-hmm.
that we worked with and had as an investor in Gymhopper. He introduced us. He said, look, these guys, they have a very small team, but now because of COVID, everyone needs their product and they really need some sales support. I think you could hit it off. You seem to think alike. So then he introduced us. We had a call, and then I first started part-time to just go there and see, do we work well together? And pretty fast, it turned out to be a good match. And then I was basically able to help them to build up the whole sales process and take it also a bit from, okay, just the founders doing the things and trying to, implement a CRM and building a proper sales process with the documentation, launching new pricing plans, all of that stuff. And then at one point, it was clear for them where they said, okay, things are looking well, we are growing fast, but now we need to think about the next level of growth. We hired more people. And then also you need to think about, okay, how do you make sure everyone is aligned and where do we want to take this company? All of that stuff. And then they were actually thinking about, okay, we need someone else as CEO. And then one thing led to the other. And I took over the CEO role from one of the founders. Was then also able to actually buy myself into the company, which was probably important for both sides.
Mm-hmm. And how that company you also exited, right?
Yeah.
So maybe can you talk a little bit about the differences in exiting the two companies?
Sure. So Gymhopper was more also a thing where we said, this is nice, it's working in Switzerland, but it's not going to be something that you want to work and dedicate your next 10 years to, because it's just an okay business in a small market. That's not something that has huge economies to grow, right? With Rentouch, it was a bit different because we were a global software company from day one. Like 60% of the revenue was from the US. And that was actually also my initial goal. While I joined the company, I said I wanted to learn how to sell to the American market. That was sort of the personal growth goal. And because of that, we then had crazy customers, like top publicly listed companies, even US government contracts, like crazy stuff. And for me, that was really cool. So there you actually saw the potential where you could say, hey, you can expand and build this into a way bigger company. And then also when AI was slowly starting to show up, you were like, okay, there's a lot of potential what we can do there. But then at one point, the company we were operating within a framework. So there was a big company that owned the framework and developed it. They had training revenue. They were basically an IP company and they wanted to have more recurring revenue, aka software revenue, what we had. They saw how we were growing. We had a good reputation because the company has been around for quite a while. And then they said, hey, we should meet. come here to Paris. Let's sit down and just talk and get to know each other. And that was, of course, clear that they had an intention of acquiring us. So we went through that process without expecting that they would buy us, but being open to it, of course. Then they made an offer, and it was a good offer that we all said, okay, like, let's do this. Let's go through the process and make this happen.
Yeah, so interesting. So that means the first company, you always knew you were going to exit, you were not going to stay on for too long. And the second one was also more a means to an end because you wanted to get exposure to, for example, US markets and so on. Or could you have seen yourself stay on longer?
Yeah, for sure. Like the journey that we embarked on, like I took over as CEO, and then just a few months later, I don't know how, I think it was like 7-8 months later, we actually sold the company. Yeah. So we had no clue when this all happened, but it was like sort of the perfect timing because like 2-3 months in, we got this email and the call say, hey, we should meet. And we're like, okay, let's do it. But the journey that we embarked on, it was like, okay, we want to build this. We have very ambitious goals. We aligned the whole team to get there. And that was like a multi-year journey. We were like, okay, this will take us 4 or 5 years to go to that level where we want to be. And that was also the commitment that we all gave. So there was by no means like, okay, there's an expiration date and that's when I will be out. It was really an opportunity that came up that no one even thought would happen that fast. It's again, the timing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just wanted to say timing is apparently everything. And I think after you had this exit, you then went on and took a break. What did you do in those 6 months where you didn't work?
Travel.
Where did you go and what did you also maybe learn about yourself in that time? Because you finally have some time to think, right?
It was actually a really cool time because there was nothing really going on, like no meetings to take or not many emails to answer and stuff like that. One of my dream destinations was always to go to Japan.
Oh, it's my favorite country.
Same. Yeah. So we then did like a whole trip. My fiance wanted to go to Bali. That was her dream. So we said, okay, let's do Bali. And I said, I wanted to go to Japan.
That's so funny that you say that because when I quit my job at Schindler and joined BCG, in between, I took a 5-week break and I went to Dubai to visit a friend. I'm not the biggest fan, but that's beside the point. Yeah. But then I went from Dubai, I went to Japan, and from Japan I went to Bali. So that's so funny that you guys did that as well.
And then we added a few countries here and there. So we also went to Vietnam or to Thailand. So we did a whole trip basically to just experience it and see. And Japan really is our favorite place. So we went back 3 years in a row because it's just such a unique place. And we also met with local entrepreneurs and always discovered a new place. So it really is like probably our second home almost by now.
So nice. So when you had this much time, what were some things that went through your head? Were you like, okay, I have to go back, I have to start something again, there's so much pressure? Or no, I'm actually just gonna chill and see if something pops up. What was the driver to, because then you obviously, as we all know, got back into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it was never a specific goal, but I knew eventually it will probably happen. But I know you cannot force that process. So I feel you really have to be a bit bored or meet the right people to then come up with a new idea. You also test a few things. So there are many things that you don't see that, I was playing around with or tested that did not work. So we had an idea about AI in either like startup finance or AI in private equity for due diligence because of our own experience with the whole due diligence process. But then for many reasons, because the team was not able to commit full time or not everyone involved or the validation was not successful. So you then just try stuff and you learn and you say, okay, maybe it's not the right fit. And then you just keep going. So basically, you just see stuff that interests you. You think about it. If it's interesting, you start to try and to execute. And if you move to the next level, you continue. And if you don't, you move on to something else.
Yeah, I think that's very sound advice for everyone out there. I just listened to this episode. I don't know if you probably know Lex Friedman, the podcast, and he interviewed, he's also like one of my absolute favorite podcast hosts. And he now just recently interviewed Pavel Durov, which is obviously the founder of Telegram. And this guy, I mean, what I found very interesting about him, like, I don't think I want to aspire to be like him, because, yeah, I just love to like do stuff outside of work as well. But what I found very interesting was he said that what he does is in the morning, he tries to obviously not look at his phone and everything, but then he also really enjoys just laying away in bed. Sometimes he sleeps like for 12 hours in the sense of he like wakes up and then he just lays in bed and he has all of these thoughts and then he falls back asleep. Or even at night, he enjoys staying up and having all of these ideas that come to him. Do you have sort of like a practice where you allow yourself or your thoughts to just flow? Or did you do that throughout those 6 months so that these ideas obviously came to you? Or how do you do that in your everyday life?
Often happens when I'm traveling, like on the plane or on a train or something. Then I just always have my iPad or a notebook, and then I just write stuff down as it flows. So there are always these creativity bursts, and I try to embrace them when they come. Can also just be at home on the weekend or something, or sitting in the garden, whatever. When then some thoughts start, and then I start to write stuff down or to sketch things on the notepads, and that's how I usually then process these things. But I really do believe that the boredom is an important part. You have to get everything out there and be really bored before some really good ideas can reach you, because before that you're just too busy with all your to-do lists and emails and everything that you don't even have the room to let these ideas flow to a certain degree.
And I think also what obviously in this very distracted world, I would say the problem with technology being all around us is obviously that you never just listen to your thoughts, right? Just shut up, just sit, just let it flow. That's also why I try to incorporate a little bit of meditation in the morning, just so I get like my thoughts flowing and feel how I actually feel, not how I'm telling myself how I'm feeling,
Right.
you know what I mean? And then sometimes I also get very interesting ideas. I think that's also why people say you get the best ideas under the shower, right? Because you
Exactly.
are just by yourself under the
No
shower,
phone.
no phone, having a good time,
Yeah.
you know, and then things just pop up. And I think it's so important to incorporate some of these moments throughout your day. And also when you take a break, not to just look at your phone, but maybe just like look out the window, you know?
Yeah. I also like meditation. I also like journaling, so that at the end of the day, before you're done, you just write stuff down. And also there you then really trigger the thoughts. And also it really helps me to empty my mind. So if
Mm-hmm.
something is on my mind, something is keeping me busy, I want to get it out there so I can sleep well, for example. Because I know if I'm thinking about stuff, I will not sleep well, or it takes me a long time to fall asleep. So if I can get it out there and write it down, whether it's a to-do, an idea, or just free-flowing thoughts, that's usually good. And I like going for walks, like 2-3 times a day. I always in the morning, if I can, for lunch or after work, always going for a walk, sometimes listening to podcasts and sometimes don't doing anything. Just walking, and there it's also a good way to process the day or new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So last month I went on a little hike with my dad. I went to Mount Kilimanjaro. And
Wow.
what I did was at the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm just going to listen to like a lot of podcasts while walking up. But in the end, I ended up not having my phone for most of the day. I didn't listen to anything.
Yeah.
And what is very interesting to me is that I have a couple of like chronic illnesses. So I have a migraine or a headache illness, which is called hemicrania continua. So it means you continuously have a little bit of a headache, which me personally doesn't bother anymore because I'm just used to it. But the craziest thing was up there, everyone else had a headache and I was feeling completely fine because I feel like I finally gave my body, first of all, enough movement throughout the day. Second of all, just like fresh air, nature, and then just time to think. And like, I was also writing a lot of things down and I came back with I don't know, 10x the energy that I had before I left. So I can definitely recommend everyone go and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. It's a really...
You just shared the 3-point checklist, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. No, it was... And then the funny thing was also when I got home, because obviously you then have to reflect on these things that you did. And I keep a journal with when my headaches are worse. I also have endometriosis, so that's also like on top of it. So I do have a couple of things that I always try to track in my journals as well. So then I try to figure out why did I feel so well when I was actually walking so much. I was sleeping on the most insanely uncomfortable mattress you can ever like imagine.
Yeah.
I slept like a baby. I woke up the next morning. I didn't have any back pain, nothing. I felt amazing throughout the entire trip. And then I came back and I was like, okay, what is it? And it's exactly the 3-point checklist that you mentioned. So walk, write stuff down, and be outside in nature. And I feel like your life is going to be so much better. I'm now also trying to incorporate all of the 3 things every single day.
It's not always easy, but I think it's also important to not beat yourself up if you don't do all the 3 things every day.
Exactly.
But overall, have a good rhythm, have a good discipline, but don't be too strict.
Yeah, and like build sustainable habits, right?
Exactly.
So I don't know, in the morning, I do have a window where I just wake up and do like my gratitude. I do my yoga, I do my meditation, I have my supplements, matcha, and so on. So I have a very structured morning routine, and it's always the same after each other because you like stack habits on each other, right? Yeah. And then also at lunch or something, I usually try to go out after lunch to also not have the biggest glucose spike, ideally. And then in the evening, I also do the same as you do. I usually try to write down things if I have something in my head. And actually, my sister and her boyfriend, they gifted me this super cool tool. It's called Remarkable. I don't know if you know it.
Yeah.
It's like a journal, but I mean, it's just one journal that you have to bring with you because I have so many at home. Each journal is for something else.
Right.
Now I'm super excited to actually use this and just write everything down in different notebooks that I just have on this small tablet, which is pretty cool.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So we went a little bit on a tangent here, but I think I would love to know how you got the idea of then starting DELOS Analytica. I remember when we talked to each other like a couple of months ago or even a year ago, I don't remember, but when we just first met through SBN, I told you about my sister working at this competitive intelligence AI startup. And then you were like, they're also in a similar space. Since then, I guess your company also has found its actual path within the ecosystem, right? So can you tell me a little bit about how you came from idea to then finding product market fit along the way?
Yeah, sure. So it was basically my mentor. We've been working together for like 4 years already. Always helped me a lot with different topics. And he has a good friend who's very active in the public affairs space. And he always heard about these problems like, hey, there's so much manual stuff going on. It's just frustrating. We lose a lot of time, etc. And at the same time, I was playing around with AI and started to really understand what you could or also what you could not do with the data and how you could process information from different websites, etc. So then he said, maybe you should meet and just have a chat together. And then I asked a lot of questions and just understood how the process sort of works. And then I just came up and wrote down an MVP description, basically from the problems that I heard and understood from someone really experienced in the field, how this could be translated into an actual software product and platform, and how AI could be integrated in that process. So I wrote that down, went back to him and said, hey, if we were able to build something like that, would that be interesting for you? And he was like, what, this is possible? How do you do that? When can I start using it? I was like, whoa, okay.
Did you know how to do it back then?
How do you mean? Like,
did you already know like what stack you would implement and how you would build it up, or
like technically?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty easy, but the first was more conceptually, like what would the software need to be able to do? And then I was like, okay, is this going in the right direction? He's like, yeah, this is like super interesting. Here I would maybe fine tune this a bit. I was like, okay, let me check if we can find a technical team to implement that. And together with my mentor, Ronnie, I then basically said, hey, I think this could really work. And he was like, okay, let's start the company. Let's do this together. I was like, holy shit.
That's so cool.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
And it's so cool because he always said over all these years, he said, look, one day we're going to probably start a company together or work together. I was like, Well, I hope so, but I don't see any way how to make that happen. And it just happened very organically. So then through another contact, I got introduced to a really good tech team that the not sort of another mentor unofficially worked with in the past. So we then said, okay, let's hire these guys and basically do a first test. And then they worked so well that we actually now, still after a bit more than a year, work with them and also basic got the CTO from them to join Delos. So it's really a little all-star team, I would say. And with that, we were then able to get more feedback from the consultant, from more consultants, and from customers that they work with. So we're still very early. We're still in the beta phase until the end of this year, but it's going well. It's always more time and a lot more work than you think, but I feel we're on a good path now because we sort of based on understanding the needs from the market and where the struggles are. I wouldn't say we are fully there yet, but we have a very clear picture about what we need to build to achieve this product market fit. And it's crazy. And if you see people that we demo it with or that we talk to about, they say, I've never seen anything like that. Like, this is crazy what you're building and also where you want to take it. So this is really a big motivation for us to say, hey, I think we're onto something. But again, it's a startup. So it could be that in 3 months or 12 months, we hit a wall and that's it. It's over. So that's the risk that we're taking.
Yeah, that's so cool. Where do you find all of these mentors?
The official mentor is basically through the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. So I've been a member there for 4 years, and we basically they had this mentorship program where they say, hey, if you're interested in becoming a mentor or being mentored, like let's just sign up. So I did that. We got matched, and yeah, the rest is history.
So cool.
And the other one is something like an official mentor. Like we never talked about this, but he has always supported me in all the ways. And he's the founder of Swisspreneur, Alain. So he's basically has been a huge inspiration and an incredible supporter amongst for the past 7 years. And that really helped me grow without having like an official mentor relationship. It does feel like a mentorship because yeah, he's giving me so much input, connections, support for everything. So I'm super grateful for both of them.
That's so nice. Would you say everyone needs a mentor, or can you also do it without one?
I would say both is possible, but for me, it helps a lot to speed things up, to not lose track of what's important, and to also be challenged in the right way to make sure I get the right stuff done. Yeah.
Yeah. What I find so interesting about you is that you have been basically in three completely different industries, right? And
Yeah.
but that also ties back a little bit to what you said at the beginning. Like you choose something and then you focus on it, right? And why did you choose? Because some people would say, but once you're in an industry, you should stick to that industry because then you have the reputation and then you can build something else. What would you say to them? And then also, how do you do you read into the industry? How do you exchange with people within the industry to get the full picture, or how's your approach?
Yeah, I think it looks like it's very different from the outside, but in the end, all three companies are software companies, B2B software companies. So I feel that is like the red line, right? And I do believe strongly that everything in the world compounds. We know that from investing, right? Where you say you invest some money and that money then grows and you have compounding interest where you actually can enter exponential growth, which is hard for our minds to grasp, but that's probably one of, if not the most powerful concept in the world. And I strongly do believe, I borrowed this from Naval Ravikant, it's everything compounds in life. So that's your work, your personal relationships, everything. So I do feel that for me, it's not that much about the sector, but about how to build a B2B SaaS company. And that's basically it. It's the same skill set. You always learn new stuff, and then AI comes around, or you're tackling a new industry. But in the end, it's the same structure. You need to have a great product with a great tech team. You need to figure out the go to market, including the sales and the marketing part, and then make sure these two areas work well together and you set the right priorities and execute lightning fast. So it's not that different from the actual operational part. But then, of course, in the different industries, you need to meet the right people who can multiply you. You need the right people who can give you feedback. So you set the right priorities and really understand how the market works. But that's something that I think I can do, whether it's gym owners or the SAFE framework with Rentouch or now public affairs. I think
Hmm.
there's always a way to it, but the core is B2B SaaS.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. It's funny because me as a consultant, also a lot of people, when we just started the company, so previously I was working at BCG and I had insights into different industries.
Yeah.
That was always also like the first question of the customer. So do you have experience in this industry?
Of
And then
course.
you have to like come up with how, yeah, you do not per se, but the team and so on.
Yeah.
And what I also learned throughout now working by myself and consulting companies again in completely different industries that I've ever been in is that at the end of the day, what I do personally is I bring companies into the 21st century. So everything around IT strategy, smart solutions, operational enablement, I'm your girl. And that you can, exactly as you said, just copy paste into different industries. Is that now we work a lot with legal clients at the moment. So I had to obviously talk to a lot of lawyers, figure out their pain points. I had to talk to different software companies, figure out how their software works, figure out what they can and cannot do, and so on. So it's always, again, the same playbook, copy paste, but how often I have heard, but so how many customers do you have in this industry and are you even experienced? I'm like, not specifically in this industry, but we have done it in others. And sometimes I believe it's even better not to be super focused on one industry because you can then cross-reference all of your experiences into the new industry and maybe have a different type of view than someone who's been stuck in there for like 20 years, right?
Absolutely. You bring the outside perspective also, and that can be a very valuable thing. Yeah. And in
Yeah.
the end, I feel it's always about probably two things when you build a company. It's about solving a problem that people are willing to pay money for. I feel that is probably the hardest to understand. What is it really that is worth your focus? Like, what product is out there that is not existing yet or not in that form yet that really there is a market for, that there can be a market created for? And then once you have that, the second part is basically all about the incentives, that you have the right people and you incentivize everyone the right way. So you really sit in the same boat and not row in different directions, etc. And if you figure out these two, I feel you can build whatever company you want and you will be probably pretty successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe on the point of incentives, what were some of your learnings that you had?
I think a really important part is that people really have skin in the game, which means you don't just give them a little bit of shares or options of your company that they then say, well, it's nice, but it's very, I cannot really assess a valuation for it, or I see it more as a bonus. So it's a nice to have. And if it works out, great. If not, it doesn't really matter. No, what I want is really people putting money on the table, buying themselves into a company that it really hurts them if the company does not succeed. That's skin in the game. So you put your money, whatever is possible, that can be very different from person to person, but there are ways to balance this out to then make sure that you actually are sitting in the same boat and you want that company to succeed. And I feel that that was what we did well at Rentouch, because there was sort of clear, okay, you need to put money on the table to become part of the journey. And I've seen other startups that I was talking to after Rentouch, where I exactly saw that it was more like the founders wanting to really control the majority and not really wanting to establish a management team that they would desperately need to go to the next growth level, to have them on eye level, but they really want to be, I'm the boss, I decide everything. You can work for me, I give you a little bit of shares, but not really much. And that's no good, because then you always have this hierarchy and you cannot really, you then have a principal agent problem where you
Mm-hmm.
basically want to please the owner so you can keep your job instead of doing what is right for the company. And that is a big issue. That's a really big problem. And the way to solve it, in my perspective, is you need to pay the valuation in cash or with cash in the loan, whatever is possible for you, where the company is today, and then share the future upside from where you are today in an almost equal manner. And that is very important, that the people feel like, okay, you as a founder built it until where you are today. Now I join, but the future upside that we create together, we have almost, ideally, yes, but almost equal shares in that upside. And I feel that's really important to make sure that you can also, yeah, share the same journey and stay in sync. Because then once there's money on the table, if your incentives are not aligned, you will start to fight each other instead of fighting together for the company. And you waste so much time on this. Just yesterday, I talked to a CEO of a very big family business here in Switzerland, and he said exactly the same. He's not the owner, but then he basically, it was a family business. So the CEO purchased himself into the company, and he purchased 10% of the company with his own money. He even went into debt to make that happen. And it was a turnaround case. The
Wow.
company was not doing well. Now they're doing extremely well. And that is probably because they got the incentives right. So this is really key.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of incentives, personal finance, like one of your favorite topics, right? So maybe can you tell me, why do you think it is essential for everyone? And also, what do most people get wrong?
How much time do you have?
I mean, I'm here.
No,
I'm
just
here.
joking. It's very simple, actually. I think most people think investing is scary or it takes a lot of money or a lot of time. It's actually very simple. Put your money in a well-diversified index fund that invests in the global economy and let it sit there for as long as you can. Never sell, never take it out, and just continue investing. That's it. On average, you probably make 6 to 8% of annual return, and that money compounds very nicely so that even when you don't hit it big with your startup, but you're able to invest in an index fund for 20, 30 years, you're probably going to be pretty well off after that. So that's it. Very simple. Put your money there, diversify it at the lowest cost possible. That is really important because the big banks usually they have quite high fees and that eats from your return profile, and just let it sit there. It's very simple.
So that means most people get wrong that they do not even invest and they
Yeah.
have too much money in the bank, basically.
Exactly. And then your money is not working for you, right? So you should always have the money that you have available, make it work for you and build your future, your private pension fund, so to speak, or your private retirement money, or for whatever you want to need it, That's the way to go.
And it's so funny. So at the end of the year, I always do like this yearly review. And I basically have this spider web. And then I have different areas of my life. And for the past, I would say 3 years, finance has always had the lowest score. It's not like super low, but compared to the areas that I'm doing quite well, it has always been the lowest. And then I obviously, now I'm self-employed and we do have like recurring revenue streams and so on. So we're not doing too terribly, but still there is not as much available to invest. And I also, for instance, had to sell off some of my stocks in order to found the company, to do some initial investments. So what would you recommend to me or anyone else in my situation? How can I be an entrepreneur who bootstraps, but then also sustainably invest in my future?
There are many angles to it. It really depends on the person. What I personally like is asymmetric bets. So I go out there and I say, okay, what can I do to generate a big upside? In my case, that's DELOS right now, right? I own a big chunk of the company because I founded it. And with that, if we generate value, this big chunk can be pretty high, but it can also go completely to zero. So this is the asymmetric bet. Very high risk, but potentially high reward if it works out in the next 10 years. Who knows? Or 20 years. I don't even know. And then on top of that, you think about, okay, what investments do you already have or what cash flow do you have available to invest in more diversified and stable and less risky, but also less return that you can say, even if the big bet does not work out, this takes you closer to your goal. So you just keep investing in that. And then you need to think about, okay, what do you actually need to live? And if there's not enough money to invest, there are two ways, right? You can either cut costs or increase your income. And often it is a big investment for the first 2 to 3 years before, like when you start a company. And then also there you have the compounding interest. People know you, people buy more from you, people recommend you. So the first 2 to 3 years are really, really hard, where you usually take a hit in your income, or even like right now, I don't take any salary because it's like we're investing and we want to build the company. So then you really need to think, okay, it's an investment. And then once you go above there and you have, okay, now it's more stable, you can increase your income, then you might be able to invest more. So these are the two things. I like the asymmetric bets, high risk, high reward, but then also a very slow but long-term investment where you just contribute whatever you can, and then think about how you can cut your costs to invest more or make more money, which I always prefer if possible, to
Same.
invest more. Yeah. And at one point, you then really have to also think about taxes, because taxes basically can eat a big part of your disposable income that you could invest. So there you then also really have to think about how you can optimize that, of how much do you take out the salary? Do you create your own holding company to invest through that company? So it's pre-tax money before you take anything out, which directly usually lets you to invest 20 to 50% more money, and you have a stronger compounding effect. So it really then also comes down to that after a certain level, I would say.
Mhm. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the holding company investing?
Yeah, so the cool thing is that you can also invest through a company. So you can say you have your operational company, and then your holding company owns your operational company. And then you, every month or every year, you charge a management fee to that company. And part of that management fee, you take out as a salary to just finance your life. But everything that is above that, you just keep in the holding company and invest it directly into the stock market, for example. Why do you do that? Because then you don't need all the money, right? You would just pay social security and also income tax. And by keeping it in the holding company, you pay just corporate tax, if even, depending on how much money you make. And then you just take that money. So you can basically, instead of paying social security for both employee and employer plus personal income tax, you then just pay the corporate tax. And that is usually significantly lower depending on where your company is operating from. And you can just use that money, which is usually much more, to be able to invest to have a stronger compounding effect.
Mhm.
No financial advice at all. So do your own research and homework, but that is a good way to think about it. How can you maximize the potential money you can invest without even needing to make more money?
Mhm. That's a really good input. I believe you also have a financial course, right? Where
Yeah.
can people find that? And do you teach them things like that in that course, or?
Yeah, there it's more about the investment, like why you should invest. How do you make sure that you don't overinvest and then you have a cash flow problem? What investment classes and how to best do it at the lowest cost possible. So very specific hands-on tips. I put that on my website. It's more of a hobby project, right? It's just like, okay, it's out there because I wanted to do that, because mainly many people from my family ask me, how do you do the investment part? I always hear you talk about that. Can you teach me? Then they really liked what I explained to them, and they said, this is so helpful. Why has no one ever taught me this? And I was like, okay, I record the videos and I just send them there instead of doing the same session over and over again. So I'm also a bit lazy in that regard.
I
Uh,
think you're just optimizing here.
Maybe. And then the whole holding part, etc. That's something I've been working on also during these 6 months after the exit, but then also over the past 2 to 3 years. Um, but it's not in the course yet. So people ask me, when do we do a course about that? So maybe one day. Right now, it's not a time priority for me, but it's for sure a topic close to my heart, because it feels a bit like playing Monopoly in real life.
Yeah, so cool. Maybe you're just talking about priorities. How do you structure your day? Because you obviously have a lot to juggle. You also have your Swisspreneur job. So you're not only focusing on one thing, but you also do a couple of other things. I believe you also obviously exchange with a lot of entrepreneurs on other topics. How do you organize yourself? And then also, how do you stay fit and remain resilient juggling so much?
Yeah. So usually I try to not take any meetings in the morning, just to have focus time or me time. Sleep is of course crucial. So I always try to have 8.5 hours in bed to get between 7 and 8 hours of actual sleep. It's not always possible. Like the past few days were a bit tough every time I come to Switzerland. The gym part is very easy because we built a home gym in our garage, which
Perfect.
is
Yeah.
very easy it's always open and there's no one there. So you really have no excuses. So the way I like to do it is wake up, go for a morning walk, then do some deep work, and then in the afternoon, some meetings, if at all. I try to really minimize that as good as possible. What I always take are client meetings with Delos, and team meetings. We have 2 per week, structured to be really aligned, but not more than that. And the rest, I just get stuff done. And I usually also go a bit with the flow. So when something hits me and I'm like really in the zone and I feel really motivated, I can go on for hours. Like it's hard to stop me. But then sometimes if I'm not really motivated, it's also okay to just say, hey, it's not clicking right now. I go for a walk, take a break, go for a workout, whatever, and then go back at it. So it is a bit free floating, but I use a little tool called reclaim.ai, which is sort of organizing my habits that I prioritized according to the meetings I have in my calendar. So I don't miss the key parts like, hey, here you have actually a blocker for doing your workout, because otherwise you run the risk of overloading your calendar. And then at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I wanted to work out, I forgot. And you run out of time and then also energy. So that helps you to stay a bit on track sometimes.
Mm-hmm. So do you use any other productivity tools? I'm not sure. Are you wearing an Aura ring?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since I just got the notification, since 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So you also have the lifetime membership, I guess.
Exactly.
Yes, same. Are you happy with it?
I like it.
Yeah.
It helps me for the sleep tracking and especially HRV. I like to understand, should you go and train heavy today or should you maybe take a rest day? So it's just a good sign of how well rested and recovered you are. And the sleep is very interesting for me to just like check the patterns. Again, also there, I think people can beat themselves up and say, no, I did not sleep well. Like it's a terrible day today. No, it's okay. Some days are great. Some days are not. Overall, you need to analyze the trend. And is the trend going in the right direction? Do you get your 7 to 8 hours of sleep on average per month or per year? That is the metric I then look at. Not, oh, it was a terrible night. I slept 4 or 5 hours because of whatever reason. It's okay. That happens. That's life. So I feel it's a great tool, but also don't give it too much power over you because it can really also stress you out.
Yeah, definitely. I think right when I started using it, I had that phase where I wanted to optimize everything. And then I realized I'm actually stressing my body more by trying to optimize everything. So then I also love to use it, obviously, as a woman to track my cycle. So that's pretty cool. And but do you use any other tools to track, for instance, your fitness? Because I mean, for me personally, this is not a great fitness tracker, right?
No, it's not. No.
I think even Apple Watch has had some really great updates, and they now also got the accuracy for the sleep. But I would personally not want to sleep with a watch on.
Exactly. And I don't like to have more displays. They're already more than enough in my life.
Yes, I think Whoop did a really good job because it is very like simple design, no screen. Do you use any of these devices, for instance, a Whoop? So you don't track your trainings?
No. I mean, I always change my training program every month. So the way I do it is I then just check how much weight do I push, like that's sort of the benchmark in how do I feel about it. Like, does it get harder or do I feel better when I walk up some stairs or just go for a walk? I usually feel what is my fitness level. So I use that as a benchmark to basically go harder or softer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that comes back to not relying so much on technology and just going inward and seeing how you feel, right? I mean, as I said, like as a woman with the cycle, you also really have to be conscious of not pushing yourself too hard, maybe through the second part of your cycle and so on. I didn't know that like 5 or 6 years ago. I was super like unaligned with my body. I used to have, as I said, some chronic health issues, and I was just like trying to patch everything up with medication, which sucked.
Yeah, it's sort of you try to fix it, but not really the root cause, just the symptoms.
Exactly. So then I started being more conscious. I started practicing like meditation, journaling, and all of these things, and tried to also kind of analyze the patterns, right? So how do I feel throughout this part of my cycle? When are my headaches worse? When does my endometriosis flare up? with what food I've eaten and so on. So I love to track those things. But now that I had like the tracking and I have certain understanding of what foods I can eat and cannot eat, I don't actually have to write it down anymore, but I just tap into like my ancient wisdom or whatever, like into my body and figure out, okay, this is not good for you. Okay, why? Yeah, maybe we adjust. But I'm not so much focused on tracking every single thing with data, which I was super obsessed with, like once I got the Aura Ring.
Yeah.
But then I also figured out that I think it's a good tool to like start off to tap into your body and like feel, because you have the metrics. But then, honestly, I don't really look at it too much. For me, it's more for like cycle tracking. And I also wore it through Kilimanjaro.
Okay.
I went up. My readiness was 16 on peak day.
Yeah.
So I have no idea how I made it, but I walked for 15 hours, almost up to 6,000 meters, and it worked. So it's also a lot about mindset at the end of the day, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
I would also like to add one core topic. I mean, we talk about all these tools and gadgets and data. One thing I personally feel is probably the most important thing besides work and everything else is your partner, your life partner. So there, I'm really lucky that, you know, we have two beautiful cats together. We hang out, we just watch some Netflix, or we travel, we talk. I feel this is the real part that you have to get right, because it can really make or break everything else in your life. So there, you know, like Ellie, my fiance, she's always like cooking very healthy meals for us because she really enjoys doing that, and always supporting, saying, no, don't worry, don't beat yourself up about that. Like having someone by your side who really gets you and supports you and also reads you, sometimes even better than you do. I feel that is probably the biggest superpower you can have to whatever you tackle, because it will make it better and worthwhile. But also if you have a terrible day or if the things don't work out, it doesn't really matter too much, because you know your place and you're a great team.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's the same with my partner. We both have he's also on the executive board of a company. So we do what started happening though, and we really try to minimize it now, is that when we were home, we were just talking about work.
Right.
But the problem is that we both love our work so much that we could just go on for hours and hours. And then we also talked about it and we said, hey, maybe we should try to also talk about other things. So what we started to do, and Jeremy, please don't kill me that I'm telling people, but we started to also, I mean, we did it now once, but we have like a monthly review sheet. So then we just take some, 1 or 2 hours on a Sunday. We want to take every month and just go through like the sheet. And then you ask, how was your month? What was your highlight? How could I have supported you better? What did you really appreciate about me? And so on. And then it's also nice because you start to reflect. So I can recommend doing that. It's a really nice also bonding experience.
Well, for sure.
Yeah. I also heard the people nowadays, they go on these like couple trips to a nice wellness center, and they do like days of goal planning. How do we want to achieve our joint goals, also individual goals, and then also like talk about how you can support each other as a partner. And I really love that. I would love to do that also soon.
Well, you have it to do now.
Yes, definitely. Have you guys ever done anything like this?
Yeah, all the time. Like we often travel like all the time basically together. And there we always talk about these things where you say, hey, what are the goals, or what is your priority? What is our priority? And we also, we stopped doing it a little bit, but we had like weekly just objectives meeting where you said, hey, let's what do we want to do this week? What are our individual goals? What are our joint goals? And then also hold each other accountable. And now it sort of just floated into this. We always talk about things. So naturally, because we both work from home, so we have a strong connection there to just tackle these things. Yeah,
that's so nice. I think choosing your partner, as you said, is probably one of the most, if not the most important decision. Yeah. Because if you're lucky, then you get to spend a lot of time with them, right? Yeah. If you're unlucky, then you don't want to spend a lot of time with them. Exactly, then
something's probably off. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about a lot of things. Now my question to you is, looking ahead, what is next? What do you want to focus your attention on the next coming years?
Doubling down on DELOS. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
For however long and whatever it takes, that's going to be the core focus. It's really exciting. It's still a lot of work and a lot of uncertainty, but even if for whatever reason it would not work out, it has already been this 1 year an amazing journey because of a lot of personal growth, but also just a lot of fun with the team. So I feel that's the best.
Yeah, nice. You look really happy, so that's good. But you always look happy, to be honest. So either you have a really good life or you can push through moments that are not as easy.
I think I'm a really lucky bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Is there anything you wish you would have done earlier?
Earlier, investing, that's the cliche, right? Because originally I started out picking single stocks and I thought, oh yeah, this is so easy. Oh, forget it. You make a lot of mistakes and then you realize, nope. So that was actually good to already learn that at university and then switch the strategy. Today, I'm still very happy with Husky and everything, but if I see what is happening at ETH, all the crazy robotics and AI startups coming out of ETH, I feel maybe if I was going back to university today, I would probably choose ETH today. Again, you never know. I'm really happy how everything turned out. And, I don't regret anything there. But just if I was a student today, it would probably be ETH over business.
Honestly, same for me, yes. Because I did Husky, but then I went to Lucerne also to study business IT, which in retrospect, I should have gone the IT route from the very beginning. But on the other hand, it brought me to where I am today. So exactly. I also wouldn't change a thing.
No regrets, but open to change things based on the additional information we have today.
Absolutely. Okay, finally, we have this little closing tradition. If you could give one piece of advice to aspiring innovators and entrepreneurs, what would it be?
There are a lot of things that come to mind. I would say listen to your gut feeling that why are you in it? Why are you doing it? And if it doesn't feel right, have the courage to change course because that's totally normal. So you can really feel good about it, go all in, and then see the compounding effect over the years to come.
Mm-hmm. Pretty good advice, I would say, yes.
It's sort of a summary of the conversation, probably.
Yes. Yeah, just compound everything, guys.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, where can people follow you and read more about what you do and your other projects?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best place. And I also have a small personal website where I summarized all of this. So these are the probably two best touch points.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Silvan, for your time today. I think we learned a lot. And also thank you for the present that you brought at the beginning. Very sweet of you. I got a book, Swiss Startups. Can you tell me a little bit about what is in there and why people also should get it?
Yeah, I mean, it was always a dream of ours to eventually write a book because we have done more than 500 podcasts by now with amazing entrepreneurs from Switzerland. And it was actually really hard to then make a selection and say, what startups do we want to feature in there? Well, we basically put together a book, Helena and me, to make these podcasts accessible so people can see a lot of the amazing innovation that we produced here in Switzerland coming out of startups and hopefully finding some inspiration to maybe become entrepreneurs themselves one day, because that's so important for Switzerland and for innovation here.
Yeah. Do you guys also use an AI tool internally at Swisspreneur? Do you know the podcast Founders?
Yes, I haven't listened to many, but I do know it. Yeah.
And because he built his own AI system where you can also access, but obviously you have to pay a little bit of a subscription. But then you can basically learn from history's greatest entrepreneurs about every topic. So you can look for a person and then you get a summary. And then also you can look for a topic and see other entrepreneurs, how they have implemented a certain type of thing. Is that something that could be interesting for you guys?
We're actually thinking about that right now.
Yeah, okay.
We scoped out a technical project, how we could do that.
Yeah.
It's still uncertain if we're going to do it because Swisspreneur is a non-profit, so we're all volunteers, sort of investing our free time, and we don't have like a big budget where we say, okay, we can now invest thousands of Swiss francs into a new platform that will for sure help some people, but maybe be of small use. So we're checking what we can do there. But of course, you have all the LLMs, ChatGPT, Grok, etc., whatever you use, and you can ask them questions and get pretty good advice. But we think that with all the interviews, all the videos, all the newsletters, now even also the book, that we have probably a unique data set that is not that easily accessible online. So that is something we think about, that you have really the Swiss perspective and data set that we create over the past 7-8 years to leverage.
Yeah, definitely good idea. I would subscribe.
Okay.
And
we have the first user.
Yes. And then you also brought me some socks. Super cool, because it's really cold outside.
Usually only interview guests get those. But since we sort of did a podcast, it's sort of a stretch that is okay to do.
Oh, really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for the great questions, and all the best.
Thank you. You too, Silvan. Thank you for listening to this episode of Tech and Thrive. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Tech and Thrive Podcast and learn more about our work at kimiana.co. If you'd like to support the show or be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Just drop us a message at info@kimiana.co. Until next time.